The reason that a lot of people struggle with eyeshadow makeup and it becoming too blown out, too smoky, is because they're constantly using blending brushes on the outer corner that are too big for their eyes. These are for your crease. You're gonna want to use smaller ones like these for your outer corner. This is how you avoid getting a smoky eye when you don't plan on doing a smoky eye. We're gonna be talking all about makeup brushes today. You guys have been requesting an in-depth video on my favorite makeup brushes on TikTok, and you guys voted on my Instagram stories that you wanted to see more about my favorite makeup brushes and in-depth how I use them and all of that. So today, we're gonna be doing that. I even have a cup full of my go-to current favorites, and we're gonna do them in order. We're gonna do face brushes, we're gonna do eye brushes, and there will be timestamps if you guys wanna jump to a specific type of brush that you are specifically shopping for. My breath is so garlicky right now. I made some homemade pesto, and I'm like, oh my God. But thankfully, you guys are not in the room with me, so it's okay. Just gotta get through this. Is there anything on my teeth? Okay, no, good. And before we get started, my name's Sarah. I am the CEO, creator of Beige Girls on TikTok. If you guys don't follow me there, make sure to follow me on TikTok and Instagram. Same username for all three at Sarahsowse, and just your go-to girl for all things beauty and wellness. So without further ado, let's get started. I am a huge believer in using the wrong brush can mess your makeup up, and using good brushes and the correct brushes can help your makeup come out better. I definitely think there's a correlation between the two. So today I'm gonna share with you guys the brushes that I think everyone should have in their collection and that are honestly going to make doing your makeup easier. They're gonna make sense. They're gonna help you do your makeup better. Let's start off with foundation brushes. When it comes to foundation brushes, these all look a little bit different, but they're all similar in their own way. 95% of the time, I'm looking for a brush that is dense, and the way that you know a brush is dense is by pressing on it and the bristles do not move. That's how you know a brush is pretty tightly packed, making it more dense. And this is just going to mimic almost like a makeup sponge or your hand. It's going to apply the makeup so much more flawlessly and seamlessly. And my current favorite go-to foundation brush is the Fenty Beauty 145 foundation brush. I love this brush because it does kind of fit in all of the small crevices and it's super dense, but you can press the foundation in or you can also swipe it in. You're gonna get two different coverages depending on how you apply your foundation with the brush. If you want more coverage, you're gonna do these pressing motions. This is gonna give you more coverage. If you want lighter coverage, you can kind of use the brush to really buff in the foundation. That's gonna give you lighter coverage, and you can do so much more with a dense brush. If you were to use a brush that isn't so dense and it's a little bit more separated and flowy like this, you're gonna have a lot of streaks all over your makeup. So using something like this is not recommended. Use a dense brush. Another favorite is the BK Beauty 101 brush. This is probably one of the best foundation brushes ever. I definitely highly recommend this brush. It has that kitten paw shape, which is an angled shape, which I don't have the brush here, but it sits on your face so perfectly. This is a kitten paw shape. The kitten paw just presses against your face super flush and really easily. It makes the makeup so flawless. I love the BK Beauty 101. It's one of my top 3 foundation brushes. You can also use brushes like Kabuki's. This personally is not my favorite, but it is a good choice for foundation brush. And if you have one already, definitely keep using it. This is good. It has a lot of surface area. This one is from Sigma. It's the F80 Flat Kabuki. This used to be really viral back in the day. There's so much surface area on this brush, so it can apply foundation pretty quickly and pretty seamlessly as well because there's a flat top, so it's going to make it pretty smooth, no streaks. And an affordable option that I really love for foundation is the e.l.f. Ultimate Blending Brush. This one is so good. It's not as dense as the others. It is still dense, but there's a little bit of, it's not completely flat at the top. giving you lots of room to really buff in the foundation. So this is a really good one if you are someone that really likes to buff in the foundation, almost like skincare. So good and affordable. Moving on to concealer. Concealer brushes are gonna look a little bit different, and it really depends on how you're using concealer. So if you are a detail person, this is a kitten paw brush from Kristen Lee Cosmetics, and this is the K12. This is really nice because it's a detail brush, meaning it's much smaller than a brush like this size. You're gonna be able to get into more detailed places like under the eyes, around the nose, and it's dense, but it also has a little bit of bend, so it's gonna be really easy to really blend and stipple product in. I love this for a concealer. I like that it also has that angle, so you can kind of get that edge where you want to do straight lines with it. Again, it has that kitten paw shape, so it sits really flush on the face, which really helps with blending the makeup in. Another brush I really love is the BK Beauty N17 brush. This one is so good because it has a lot of surface area. You can put product on a larger amount of area quickly. So I love using this for my foundations that I use as concealers. If you guys don't know, I haven't really been using concealer anymore. It's a little bit too heavy for me. So I have switched to using lighter shade foundations as my concealer, or color correctors and brighteners. Whenever I use a foundation as a concealer, I love to use this brush because it helps me place where I want to lift really easily, really quickly, but it also has like these bristles on the side that help you really get into those crevices on the face as well and really just blend everything in. The fact that this brush has a little bit of give when you move it, that also really helps with buffing and blending things in, but it also has this flat side that you can really press the product in with too. So this is a really, really good brush. It's a really versatile brush. I'll probably mention it again later with another special set of brushes. And this is a classic concealer brush. And a classic concealer brush that I think is super beneficial to have in your makeup collection is the brush like the BK Beauty A505. It doesn't have to be from BK Beauty, but this is a classic concealer brush. It's really flat. It works with the concealer formula specifically because of the brush hair type. And I love using this for cleanup under my brows or cleaning up my eyeliner. And you could even use this type of brush to apply concealer on your eyelids to get a cut crease because it has that really flat shape and it also has that rounded edge, which really helps with the cut crease as well. So this is really good to have. Definitely don't dismiss this brush in your collection. I know sometimes you can get makeup brush sets and some brushes you're just like, when am I ever going to use this? What is this brush for? I would definitely say sometimes the labels are a little misleading when it comes to what the brush is for, and that is not law. It is not Bible to use the brush as the company says to. I worked briefly with a brush company and it was run by someone who doesn't know anything about makeup, and he was naming the brushes. So that just goes to show that the company doesn't always know what the brush is for. So you do not have to go by that. It is just a little guide, but it may not be the best guide necessarily. Moving on to cream contour brushes. These look similar, but they also look different in a lot of ways. So let's go through them and why I like these ones specifically. Starting with an affordable one from Milani. This is their F220. Again, something that is dense is going to put the makeup on so flawlessly. It's basically going to do the blending for you. So when the brush is dense, it can do a huge part of blending for you when it comes to makeup, and that's why it's so beneficial to have these type of brushes. Another thing I want to mention that's really important is the size of the brushes. I think for a long time we were being sold huge brushes like these, and I'm not against it, but I'm more for smaller detailed brushes because if you have a hard time with placement and makeup, getting the correct brush and having it fit where you should be placing that specific product is going to help in the makeup process so much. It's gonna take a lot of extra work out for you by not having to clean up so many things, fix so many things, and just getting that makeup placement down the first time because you're using the proper size brush. So the Milani one is a really good option. It's an affordable option, and I love brushes like this for bronzer. I feel like it fits exactly where I would be placing bronzer. It's not too big. I can really control where the bronzer is going, and it's nice and dense. I like to use liquid and cream bronzers. This is for liquid. These brushes are for liquid and cream bronzers, not powder bronzers. And it keeps it really compact on my face and just exactly where I want it. It's not gonna spread around too far. And because it's dense, as soon as I put it on with this brush, it's already blending it out automatically because of the density of the brush. Okay, another good one is the BK Beauty 106 brush. It is very similar to the Milani brush size and density. This one's a little bit less dense. So this one is also really good for bronzer. Because it's not super dense, you can really play with the bronzer, really blend it in. When it's a little bit less dense, you can play with the product a little more. There's a little more flexibility when the brush isn't so dense. But again, I like how this fits exactly where I would put bronzer. Really matches the area that I would be placing the product, and that's why it is so perfect. And BK Beauty bristles are so freaking good. I swear, BK Beauty brushes make putting on your makeup easier. They do like 50 to 60% of the work. Another option you guys see me use all the time is this Makeup Forever 109 brush. And again, it has this really interesting shape, kind of like where I put bronzer. So that's a reason why I ended up really loving this brush, because it makes blending my bronzer so easily. All I have to do is put the brush on my face and the blending is done. We don't have to do too much. The shape of it literally matches the shape of the bronzer on my face. And it's also super dense. The hairs are super nice, super luxe. This is a really luxe, expensive brush, but it will help you blend out your makeup so seamlessly and easily. Another really good option that I want to mention is the Sephora 56 brush. I'm a huge fan of Sephora Pro brushes. They're really good, but I specifically love this one because of its shape. Once again, I could use this for bronzer, but because it has a little bit of a more thinner shape, I really love this brush for contour. The area that you're gonna put contour is gonna be a little bit more precise than bronzer. So having a brush that is more compact in size is gonna allow you to be more precise when placing that specific product. And for me, that is contour. So if you can find a brush like this, or if you wanna get this brush specifically, it's going to help you so much with applying contour to your face. Again, it just literally does the work. It's not necessarily just the brushes that I'm showing you, like you should get this brush. It's more so the way that I'm using it and the thought process behind it. And I hope you guys can really understand which brushes you should be using and why. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same brand, but the shape, the size, and the density all really, really matter when you're choosing a brush for your makeup. So those were for bronzer and contour. Moving on to blush brushes. I love blush, and all of these brushes look so similar to each other. They're all from different brands, but I'm going to explain. Once again, the shape matters. And for blush, I highly, highly, highly recommend getting brushes that are angled like this. These type of brushes are specifically for contour, bronzer, and blush. So if you just want to get a bunch of the same one, or you could just use them at the same time. You don't always have to have a clean brush for each step. They can all work together if you're comfortable with that, but I will die on the angled brush hill for blush. It just makes blush application so freaking seamless. You don't have to think about it, nothing. You don't have to worry that the blush is gonna come out splotchy depending where you place it first. Angled brushes are the most foolproof way to apply blush in my opinion. And my recommendations are from BK Beauty. Once again, they make some of the best brushes. Huge fan. The BK Beauty A507. It's nice and thick, angled, dense, has a little bit of has a little wiggle room, but just fits again on the cheek perfectly where I like to have my blush. This one is a little bit bigger width-wise, so I like to put on my lighter blush that's not as punchy, as you guys know, with this brush. It's kind of like my everyday blush, my first blush, the softer blush, because it is a little bit bigger. So because it's a little bit bigger width-wise, it's gonna cover more surface area, so keep that in mind. Another brush I love that is so similar is from the Sephora Pro collection. Again, it's the number 93 brush. And this one, you can see, is a little bit smaller in width. You see that? But other than that, they are the same shape. It's just a little bit smaller in width. If you guys don't know, for some reason, I love to put on two blushes. The second blush I apply is always the one with a little bit more of a punch, a little bit more color, a little bit more bright. And this is the brush that I love to apply it with because it's a little bit smaller. It's gonna cover a little bit less area, so I can be a little more precise with that blush and not get it all over. So that's the reason why I change the size of the brush. The actual properties of the brush are almost the same. It's just the size that's a little bit different. And that little difference makes a huge difference in your makeup and the application. And for powder blush, I also love angled brushes. I have a few here. I don't know where this is from, but I just kept it because it's an angled brush. These are specifically for powder. You see how they're not as dense. They're way more fluffy. And the hairs are different. The hairs are different on these, but they're so much more fluffy. These are for powder. These are not for cream or liquid products. This is actually the same brush. One is just old and one is new, but they're the same brush. And this one is a hot mess. I don't know what happened to it. But these brushes are the same, and they are both the Morphe M405 brush. Again, angled brushes are perfect. And because these aren't as dense and the hairs are different, they make blush so easy to put on, so pretty, so seamless, and really just really blurred. It's just this is just such a good brush to use for blush. It's definitely my go-to. I will buy it over and over because they're so affordable from Morphe, and I specifically like the shape and size of these ones. When I made my own makeup kit, I got a lot of Morphe brushes because they're so affordable. So if you can find a lot of brushes that look like the ones I'm mentioning from Morphe, definitely get them from Morphe. Morphe is really good. I will say the brushes themselves don't last as long, like you see that, but I refuse to let go of this because it's still perfect. But just know, the cheaper the brush, sometimes things like this do happen where the quality isn't as good. They don't last as long. This next brush is very specific, and you will always see me use this brush. This is the BK Beauty 205 brush, and this is the brush that I like to use to contour my nose. Not a lot of brands have this angled blending brush. It almost looks like the blush brushes, but it's so much smaller and it's so much thinner in width, and the angle is almost like a kitten paw, how it allows the brush to lay flush with my nose, with my skin. It's just so perfect. The width is perfect for nose contour. I have this one for creams and liquids. Moving on to brushes for powder, but before we move into brushes, let's talk about my favorite way to apply powder, which is with a powder puff. I don't know what I was doing all these years without using these. I'm sure makeup artists have been using these for a long time. I didn't really use these in my professional kit because they weren't as popular when I was doing makeup professionally. And if you don't know, there are so many things that are gatekept in the makeup community when it comes to being a makeup artist, I will say. I think we've learned a lot more on TikTok, but before that, so many things are being gatekept. So didn't know about these, but these are my #1 option for powder all over the face, under my eyes. These are just my go-to. These ones are from Salon Perfect. They come in a pack of 6. They're $6. You can get them on Amazon, but I really like these Salon Perfect ones. So good. They put on powder so flawlessly. I will say a brush cannot mimic the way that these put on powder. So my biggest suggestion would be to get these first and foremost. But if you are against it, because they do provide a little bit more coverage, a little bit more glam, but if you don't want that and you just want a little bit of powder, then I do have some options for you, and it's not gonna be what you probably think. Again, these type of brushes are what would normally come in a makeup brush set or what you would think of for powder. I truly just I honestly kind of just despise brushes like this. I don't really see the point in them. I don't think they work very well. I actually think they make you more prone to making mistakes with your makeup than anything. So this is not what I would suggest for powder. I would suggest something like this, which is I would suggest something like the Sephora Pro Foundation number 47. I would suggest something like the Sephora Pro Brush number 47. This is a holy grail brush for me. It is so good. I showed it earlier. It has that kitten paw shape. So again, it just fits right up against your face and really easy to push powder into the face. You can use this for so many different things, but I specifically put on powder with this brush. I know it's small, but you can really pinpoint where you're putting on powder. It fits perfectly above the lip, around the nose, under the eyes, on the forehead. You don't need to be using big brushes like this. So many times in makeup sets, you're gonna see brushes like this. You're gonna see them even bigger than that. And those makeup brushes just do not have a place in my roster, okay? Like, they're just not my favorite, not my favorite. I love how this sits flush to your face, and I feel like you don't have to guess how to use this brush. It's very straightforward with the way that it is shaped, with the way that it's built, and you just know what to do with it. With these type of brushes, it's very questionable. Should you be using it like this? And you can see it's not dense, so it's kind of wiggling around. This has the ability to pick up makeup and kind of move it around that you didn't want to and create those patches on your face. If you do have these, you don't want to get rid of them. You can use powder on these, but use powder on the side of the brush. So you want to dip the brush into powder like this and roll the powder on. So you don't want to use it like this, which is what I think most people would assume, and that's why it messes people up, because it has that taper. It doesn't have it doesn't have a flatness, and it's not dense. So it's picking makeup up in different places on the face if you're using it very roughly, which a lot of people use makeup brushes with their full force. I don't know why we're like that, but that's just what we do. So you want to rewire your brain to use brushes like this if you're still using them, if you're still buying them, or you already have them, to use them on their side, almost like a kitten brush would. I think that's why we have kitten paw brushes now, because this is how you would use the brush versus like this, like straight up against the face with the tip of the brush. So again, if you have these type of brushes, use them on their sides. I feel like it's not that intuitive, and that's why I don't really like those brushes, because not everyone is going to intuitively know something like that, and they have so much potential to mess up your makeup. Before we get into eye brushes, let's talk about these brushes, which none of them look like they have anything in common, and that's because I called this collection the multi-use, multifunctional brushes, which are really, really good to have in your collection because you can do so many different things with them. For example, these three brushes look really similar. This is a NYX foundation brush, this is a e.l.f. blush brush, and this is the Milk makeup brush, which I have really been loving lately. But I like having these because they're compact, they're dense, and because they're super compact, you can use them for blush, bronzer, contour, foundation, concealer. So everything you need to do can be done with these types of brushes. They're not necessarily my go-to brushes all the time, except for I do love this Milk one a lot. Especially when I'm using my Milk makeup products, I just use this one for every single product. The tint, the blush, the contour, so good. And it reminds me of these. So just because e.l.f. says this is a blush brush, you could use this for foundation. The angle gives it that kitten paw shape. Okay, my breath, my breath is so garlicky, and even though it's just me, I'm like, it's like spicy. Coffee break. So yeah, I just love these brushes. The NYX Professional Foundation Brush, the Milk Makeup Brush, and then the e.l.f. Blush Brush. They're all so good, so multi-use. These brushes, some of them I have already mentioned, are also super multi-use. The Sephora 47 brush I used to use for my under eyes, and now I just use it for my whole face for setting my face with powder, but I've seen people use it for cream and liquid blush. I've seen people use it for cream bronzer. A lot of makeup professionals use this brush, and we all use it so differently, which is what I love about it. The Nikkie LA Rose and BK Beauty collab. This brush is actually, to be honest, a brush that I never saw myself using really, but I love this brush now, and I use it as a concealer brush or a brightening brush, but you can also use this honestly for powder. I have used it for blush in the past. I also loved it for cream blush so much because, again, just like that Sephora 47 brush, it fits perfectly. It's nice and flat, so such a good brush to have just for multiple things. Another brush that's super multi-use is the BK Beauty A506 brush, which is the Angie Hot and Flashy and BK Beauty collab. I also really loved this collab, but it's a mini kitten paw brush. This is so good. This brush actually reminds me of Makeup by Lex. And again, you can use this for concealer, which I see people use all the time, but I actually use this for my blush. I know it's so small, but like I said earlier, I love to be intentional with my second, more punchy blush, and this little brush, perfect for that. So sometimes things come in sets and you're like, what am I gonna do with that? That's what I do with this, and I love having this little brush. It really does come in handy. These are 3 brushes that I like to use for under eye powder, and these are pretty multi-use also, but this is the Kosas brush. This is called the Face Detailer, and it came with their Cloud Set powder, and it is so perfect. Again, it looks like a blending brush almost, but it's very flat, and that's how you should be using this brush, on its side to get the most out of it. I just love this brush for powder. Kosas did a really good job with this. Another one that I also really, really love for under the eyes and powder is the Nikkie LA Rose BK Beauty Collection collab N14. And this is what I mean by detailer brushes being way more beneficial than big brushes. You don't need all of these detailer brushes, but it is good to have at least one in your collection because you can do things like apply powder, you can dust away powder, you can press in powder, you can use it for a little bit of highlight if you want, a little bit of concentrated blush if you wanted. So it's so good to have these small brushes because you can be so much more intentional and precise with them, and it's gonna make your makeup look so much more professional that way. Another brush you guys probably see me use all the time on my face that I wanted to mention before we move on to eyes is the Sephora Pro Brush Collection number 99. It is this really interesting brush. It has this tapered end, but it's actually really, really dense, but it does have the tapered end, which means it kind of comes to a point. So I love using this brush specifically. Look how it fits under my eye and around my nose. It's like the perfect little detailer brush, again, like those. I use this to press in my loose powders. I never want my loose powders to just sit on top of my skin, so this does a really good job. I can press them in, and it fits perfectly right in that area where I have placed them, so it's just the perfect brush. It's a brush you would look at and be like, what am I gonna do with this? That's what. Okay, let's move on to eye brushes. I'm gonna kind of do them in groups. I'm gonna try to breeze through eyeshadow brushes. There are a lot that I recommend, but there are some that you absolutely need, and I will let you know which one those are. But I want to say, not every makeup brush brand does a good job of creating sets, but BK Beauty does an amazing job of curating sets, and some of my favorites are from them, like the eye set brush. They have a detailer one and like a blending one. Both of those are so good. They're so pricey, but you guys, the brushes are gonna last you so long. They're such good quality, and they make doing your makeup so much easier. They're really gonna help you do your makeup, and you guys will love them. Trust me, they're such good quality. They do the blending for you, which is really important with eye makeup brushes especially. The first brush that I think everyone needs is a fluffy crease brush, a blending brush per se, and this is what you're gonna be using on your crease. I have so many here. I wanna say all of these are from BK Beauty, so they have so many. They have different sizes. They're so good, you guys. This is the MAC brush. Sigma and Morphe have very similar brushes. These are really, really good. These are staples to have in your collection. So we have the MAC 217 staple. I actually don't use these as much ever since I got my BK Beauty brushes. BK Beauty blending brushes are my favorite for eye, so highly recommend those. But we also have the Sigma E25 blending brush and the Morphe M503. Comes in different colors, but it's the 503 brush. For blending brushes, I'm going to highly recommend different sizes. So you want a large one for your crease, you want a medium one for your outer corner, and you want a small one, a detail one for your outer corner as well, but to get even more in the outer corner and not have an overblown eyeshadow. The reason that a lot of people struggle with eyeshadow makeup and it becoming too blown out, too smoky, is because they're constantly using blending brushes on the outer corner that are too big for their eyes. These are for your crease. You're gonna want to use smaller ones like these for your outer corner. This is how you avoid getting a smoky eye when you don't plan on doing a smoky eye. So these are also from Luxie, LaRousse, BK Beauty. All of these are already linked in my favorite makeup brushes and tools link. So if you guys wanna see all of them, make sure to check out that link. I don't wanna go over each of them because they are very similar, okay? Very similar, doesn't matter which one you get, they're all gonna get the job done. Same with these, but BK Beauty is hands down my favorite, work the best. Next type of brush I wanna mention that everyone should have in their collection are flat shader brushes. I have so many here, we're not gonna go through them all, but these are so important to have. You wanna have one that is like this, so you can pack on eyeshadow to your eye. This is where we're doing the eyelid color. You want something that's flat so it can pack it on, especially if you're doing like a matte eyeshadow or a cut crease and you want it to be pretty precise. If you want something that is a little bit more blown out, not so precise, this is very similar, but it's a little bit more fluffy up here. So I like this for like sparkly eyeshadows that I just kind of want to dust on. But again, the surface area of this brush is perfectly fit for my eyelid, but it's not as compact and dense as the other one. So you can put some sparkle on with this. It's not going to be as opaque with this one. You can make it, but it can also do less opaque looks as well. This type of brush that everyone needs in their collection, these actually vary a lot, but I'm gonna call these detailer brushes, and you're gonna need a few different ones for a few different things. So let's get into what you'll need each type for. We'll definitely need a pencil brush at some point. I think these are really good for your inner corner, outer corner. If you can get some blending done with it, I think these are so good to have. They're the M431s from Morphe. I have quite a few of these. I don't use them too often, but I say it's good for everyone to have one in their collection. Type of brush I highly recommend is a detail brush like these. Hard to see. These are two completely different brushes. These are two completely different type of brushes. One is a short shader brush from BK Beauty, and this one is like a pencil brush, but it's cut off and it has a little bit of an angle. Both of these are so good for outer corner or eyeshadow winged liner. You guys see me use both of these a lot for that smoky or eyeshadow wing liner that I like to do. These are the brushes that you can accomplish it with. Like I said, I'm gonna have everything listed in that link and down below for you guys. The most important, most used ones by me, ones that I recommend, will all be in that list. But I'm a huge eyeshadow wing girly, and I think we all like the eyeshadow wing a lot, especially because we've moved away from winged liner, liquid liner, gel liner a lot. And if you want to use eyeshadow, you have to have some type of brush like that. And then these are also just another kind of detail brush to have another shader type of brush. And then this is kind of like a pencil brush, but not really. It's like a little bit thicker, a little bit more dense. These are both really great for either eyeshadow wings or outer corner action, both from BK Beauty, so good. And then the last one I wanna mention is a good angled brush. An angled brush. Last one I wanna mention are the angle brushes. These are so good to have, especially the thin ones, you guys. The thin angled brushes, not necessarily the thick ones, are so good to have because they're also going to help with eyeliner. But this is if you like to use gel liner or you like to use pencil liner. You can really, really enhance the liner with an angled brush. You can get it to be thinner, more pointy, more sharp, more easily than the actual pencil itself. And honestly, I think it's easier to do a winged liner with a pencil and an angled brush than liquid liner itself. So it'll save you so much time and headaches if you use that method. If you guys want to see that method, let me know. And last one, this is a special brush, but I would consider this like a concealer brush, and these type of brushes always come in makeup brush sets, and you're like, what am I gonna do with that? Or even like a lip brush. These are so good to have for your pigments, your shimmers, your glitters. These will open up the sparkle on a shimmer shadow so beautifully. It's something about like the flatness of it and the type of hairs that the concealer brushes have. They will really help open up the pigment of an eyeshadow, especially if it's sparkly or glittery, shimmery. It's going to look so much better. They almost mimic your finger. So when you put on eyeshadows that are shimmery or glittery, sparkly with your finger, they always come out so much better than with a brush. So instead of using a brush that's flat and like fluffy like this, use a concealer brush like this. You're gonna get so much more out of your sparkly, glittery eyeshadow. And those are all the brushes. Like I said earlier, I will definitely have a link for you guys. I update that link constantly with favorite makeup brushes, and it's in order of foundation, blush, bronzer, eyes, all of that. So definitely check that out. Get together your list of brushes, because I promise you, if you use the correct brushes, the correct density, the correct shape, it will change the way that you do your makeup, and you will probably feel like you're so much better at your makeup with the correct brushes. That's how much of a difference the right makeup brush can make to your makeup routine. If there's any step you guys struggle with specifically, let me know in the comments so I can help you guys out and see which brush you are probably needing or what you may be doing wrong. There are common mistakes people make when using brushes, like being too heavy-handed, using a brush that is too tapered, too fluffy, and picking up the makeup. So there are some things, but good brushes like the ones I mentioned are not going to do that, and they are just going to level up your makeup game. I'm telling you. If you guys have any of these brushes, or you have a favorite brush that you want to tell me about, let me know in the comments. I always love hearing your guys' favorites, because you guys also put me on to so many products, and I love hearing from you guys. So make sure to leave a comment, let me know, and I hope this video helped you guys with makeup brushes, how to choose them, which ones to get. It's not always about the brand. It's more so about the shape, the density, and the quality of the brush. From e.l.f. brushes to BK Beauty, I love them all. And yeah, that is it for this video. I hope it was helpful for you guys. Don't forget to follow me on my other platforms to stay up to date with everything else. And I will see you guys in next week's video.